Another familiar face on Wall Street being added to the incoming Trump administration. Eamon Javers has details for us. Eamon?
Yeah, hi, Bill. We're getting some news now from Mar-a-Lago, the Trump transition, a new office and a new person to head that office. The Trump transition says that they are creating what they're calling the White House National Trade Council. That's something that we haven't seen before. And they're also saying that Dr. Peter Navarro will head that council. The president-elect's office saying that he's going to serve as the assistant to the president and director of trade and industrial policy. They say that the formation of the National Trade Council further demonstrates the president-elect's determination to make American manufacturing great again and to provide every American the opportunity to work in a decent job at a decent wage. They call Navarro a visionary economist. He will be familiar to viewers of CNBC and folks on Wall Street. Navarro, a China hawk, really, on trade. He's also written an op-ed at one point in his career in which he said that a trade pact should never be used as an instrument of foreign policy, as this only leads to economic disaster. That is in contrast with what Washington has traditionally done in the post-World War II era. Trade pacts have been used by Washington as carrots and sticks. Navarro will bring a very new perspective to that, saying that foreign policy goals maybe should not necessarily be the driver of those trade pacts. Donald Trump himself has signaled that what he wants from trade globally is something that puts America first, that's good for American workers. That was the basis of his campaign, and we're now seeing him roll out this new trade council and a new person to head it, Bill.
But I also wonder, Eamon, if I may, so they've already talked about having Wilbur Ross oversee much of trade policy. Now they're creating, does that mean there's not going to be a trade rep?
That does not mean that necessarily. It's unclear who would be the trade rep, especially if you have a trade council. This sounds, when you talk about a council in White House parlance, you're traditionally talking about a group of outside advisors. This is brand new. What they're saying is that the National Trade Council will work collaboratively and synergistically with the National Security Council, the National Economic Council, and the Domestic Policy Council to fulfill the president's vision of peace and prosperity through military and economic strength. So clearly another council being added to the orbit of the presidency here, but some influential voices will be sitting on it.
And notice the way, I mean, this is all about under the White House's direction. And that's the whole point. We had that discussion with the former trade rep the other day. His point was the need for the position is to work with Congress. So again, it seems pretty clear at this point this administration is signaling trade policy is going to be run out of the White House or perhaps through commerce. And it's going to be interesting to see if they fill that cabinet position.
And Kelly, I think what Wall Street should understand about this incoming administration is that this is not necessarily a typical administration full of traditional button-down Wall Street and Washington Republicans. No. This is going to be an administration that very much views itself as not coming from the establishment and therefore having some leeway to reinvent things that have been done in Washington a certain way for a long time. I talked to a person familiar with all this transition thinking just today about this, who said that Wall Street might be getting it wrong when they look at exactly what's going on with the Trump transition, that this might be an administration that is more hostile to trade deals, certainly, but to what they're calling crony capitalists, and not afraid to target CEOs of companies that have been traditionally very powerful in Washington, like Boeing, which we just saw earlier with Phil LeBeau's report. So there's some nuance here that Wall Street needs to look at and understand. Who's up and who's down in the new Washington could be very different than what we've seen before.